Good afternoon and welcome to episode number 46 of At Your Service with Haber and Martinez. Today we are joined by two special guests. We have with us the illustrious Jeffrey K. Rubenstein and his managing partner, believe it or not, Susan Morris Haber. No relation to me, obviously. You can just take one look at her and know that we could not possibly.
Yeah, definitely not related to you, brother. Right? Definitely not related.
So Jeff and Susan are both practicing criminal defense attorneys in Beverly Hills, California, Los Angeles County, and they are both former Los Angeles County Assistant District Attorneys. They've joined us today for what we've captioned California versus Florida, an East Coast, West Coast criminal law and procedure battle royale. Basically, what we want to kind of get to you all in terms of the overarching concept is the differences between laws from state to state. And in our case, we'll use California and Florida. But as you know, I have to give you a brief little history lesson. So let's just talk about the fact that basically America was formed when 13 independent colonies decided that they no longer wanted to be ruled by a monarch. And so we created a democratic republic, which is a system of government where the people get to decide what the laws and rules are going to be, and they get to choose their designated representatives. We have 50 states in the United States, as I would assume most of you know. There's one federal district, 15 major territories, and 12 insular areas. Our Constitution is just a piece of paper, but it is the bedrock for what we call a federalist system. And so what we have are two tiers of government in this country. First tier is the federal system, and basically the federal government is responsible for matters of larger territorial concern, defense, foreign affairs, and the economy. That said, each individual state and then municipalities within the state are sentient. They have their own laws and rules. Now, of course, there is a thing that we call the Supremacy Clause, which is found in Article 6, Paragraph 2 of the Constitution, that basically says if there's a conflict between the law of any state and the law of the federal government, then the federal law is supreme. And from that, we find the concept we call the Supremacy Clause and the doctrine of preemption. So federal law preempts state law, but what happens when you have conflicts between states? It's not so much an issue in the criminal realm, because the criminal realm is pretty cut and dry. If you commit a crime in Florida and you get caught in California, you're not going to be taken to court in California to answer for that crime. You may be taken to court to answer in terms of extradition, or if you commit some new offense, but ultimately your Florida case is going to have to be heard in Florida, your California case is going to have to be heard in California. But still, we definitely have issues where there's overlap because people travel, people visit. You may not be aware of certain laws. Let's say that you're a California resident where marijuana is recreationally lawful. And you can walk into a store if you're over 18, I'm sure Jeff and Susan will clarify that. But whatever the age is, you can walk into a store and buy gummies or candies or mints or weed or ink or liquid or wax or shatter or any legal variation on the THC theme. But you cannot do that here in Florida. All of that stuff is illegal here. Even if you have a medical marijuana card in Florida, there are very strict rules regarding your purchase, possession, and use here in the state. But again, let's say you're a California resident and you are a recreational weed user and you're taking a trip to Florida and you decide that you're going to bring your recreational weed to you because you don't know better because it's legal in California, right? So those are the types of things that we'll get into, as well as some other issues regarding quirkiness between laws, some differences that we have. But one of the biggest things that I want to hit on, and perhaps where we'll start, if you guys don't mind, is here in Florida, and I can speak for myself, I may generalize out to others, but certainly speaking for myself, I have no idea what's going on in California. I'm not there, and I'm going to be honest and tell you, I've never been to California. The furthest west I've ever been is Las Vegas. I never quite made it past that. For reasons that we don't need to get into here. But be that as it may,
they don't let you go past Vegas. They're afraid of you in California. There's posters of your face all over California. If you see this man in California, notify authorities immediately.
I don't know what the reality is on the ground there. But we see reports, obviously your local DA, Mr. Gascon, if I'm pronouncing it correct, is, all over the news. And depending upon which channel you watch, you get different reports. But, the general consensus, at least for sure, is that this is the second time now they're trying to evict him from office because he's apparently soft on crime. And so I kind of want to start there, maybe with the status as you guys see it, both from the lens of former assistant district attorneys under obviously a different DA, not this guy Gascon, and then also fast forwarding through today's lens as how these types of things, if in fact there is a soft on crime mentality, how that affects your day-to-day practice. That said, welcome. And I'm sorry I took so long to get
there. It's about time. I fell asleep. My dog fell asleep.
So first, just let me make a couple introductory remarks also, because first of all, Michael and I I consider you a close dear friend, even though we've never met, but I've known you for like 30 years. And, we've talked on the phone, refer each other business here. And so have a lot of respect for you guys there in Florida and what you do. And our stuff out here, law offices, I want to just say first and foremost that I am just the pretty face of the organization. Susan is the brains. And that's actually true. So you can see I'm a double winner here because
she already responded. She already responded 18 for medicinal marijuana and 21 for recreational. She's on top of it, my friend.
So when I have questions, I say, ask Susan, and I ask Susan. So with all that, although I love to hear myself talk, I'm going to get you the real answer. So take it, Susan.
Well, hi there. Thank you, Jeff. It's a pleasure to be here and to meet you all virtually. I think as you were talking, Michael, I think that at this time, for me, Jeff and I are great together working as a team because we see things similarly and we also see things differently. Based on political, social, personal viewpoints, but we always come back to the same page at the end. So you may get different answers from us as far as, for example, Gascon. My opinion, I see it more on the prosecutorial standpoint because that's where I feel like I think that your answer as far as what's happening in the news and what is broadcast is partially true, partially fiction, in that I think it might be more politicized in the news. However, it is based on reality of the inconsistencies in the enforcement of law and also policies that he had instituted as soon as he hit the ground, and then over many months, and then the first year in office, he retracted them. And then different offices, I think there's over 20 area offices and branch offices in the county of Los Angeles. It's the largest law firm in the country and third largest in the world. And so there's a lot of people that are being affected working for him and also in the county of LA. And the rules are being followed inconsistently and policies.
Can I ask you a question?
Hang on a second, Ed. Hang on one second. One of the things that struck me, and again, I understand and I agree with you. It's one of the reasons I put the disclaimer about the news, because if you watch, MSNBC versus Fox, you're going to get totally different takes. But that said, here's something that is indisputable from my end that I've seen, which to me is, I've never seen this in my 30 plus years experience. Ed, please tell me whether you have. But I have seen multiple assistant district attorneys who work under Gascon today trashing him publicly on the news. I have never seen that here in Dade County.
Well, I can tell you, I can answer why it wouldn't happen publicly.
But now they say it.
Publicly,
I'm not talking about privately. I'm talking about these are people who go on the news and actually give interviews and go into detail talking about specific cases, specific policies, and specific problems with their boss. I mean, calling the man out. So that seems to be unless they have a political bend and they're going to be running against it.
I think my question might lead to possibly why I think that would happen. My question was going to be this, because I haven't bothered to look it up, and it just occurred to me now, based on what you were saying, Susan. Was Gascon a former prosecutor? Was he a former DA? See, that's what I was getting at. I think what you're going to have is, because of what you said, he probably thought these policies would work, having never been in the belly of the beast, put the policies in place, and then went, uh-oh, this ain't working. And then you've got former prosecutors who were probably career prosecutors who probably were telling him, that's not smart, that's pretty stupid, and he did it anyway, and they're bitter, so they're going to come out and say, look, this is what's happening. And I think that's the problem. I think, if I may, Susan, you know, we've got a prosecutor here, the state attorney in Dade County, who was a state attorney, but she's a Democrat. And she's a little bit left, not too much, but she's a little bit left. She's a Democrat. But at the end of the day, she was a state attorney, right? She's right from law school. She was a state attorney. She was with the office for 10 or 15 years or whatever, and then was promoted, was groomed by Janet Reno, the previous prosecutor, who was a Republican. So she kind of already knew where the pitfalls were. And maybe that's why Gascon is having some problems. Some things seem common sense until you actually do it. What do you think?
I think that definitely is an issue, and something that people in the DA's office talked about, and it was in the media as well. In that, I believe, and I you know, you can correct me if I'm wrong. However, I believe, and Jeff may know more, is that that Gascon was with law enforcement actually for many years. And then he went to law school. He became an attorney. I do not believe that he was a prosecutor in any county. He was the district attorney in San Francisco prior to running for office in LA County. There were mixed reviews as to his work in San Francisco. I think that's putting it kindly. I don't think that he was a major favorite there from the prosecutors that worked for him. And then he came down here. I'm not sure why LA County thought that it was going to be different here.
Politics.
Right. I mean,
the short answer is politics.
And then there were lots of issues with the race when we had Jackie Lacey, and some political issues as far as things related to her family that I feel did not help her in the election. And then the result is that Gascon prevailed. I'm very close with many prosecutors as colleagues and friends still, and they maybe not be saying it publicly, but privately they're very disappointed.
So what do you think's
going to happen with this guy?
Do you think he's soft?
So I can speak to this. So what happened is, you know, the pendulum in our business, in society, in law, in economics, the pendulum swings one way and then the other. And what we had is things were conservative. And in the 80s and 90s, we had all of this major prosecution, all of these enhancements, you know, for crack cocaine, for guns, prison priors.
Were those, Jeff, were those enhancements matters of state law, or you're talking about like federal enhancements?
Well, they were state law. I mean, it's true about the federal system, but we're not talking about that here. But more and more enhancements, letting statutes of limitations go longer. Just somebody that's been in the system, they had almost no chance. With 3 strikes, they would strike, they would double the times. You would walk into court and somebody, it was regardless of whether they were guilty of this crime or not, they had such a tail, you had no bargaining power, and you were having to plead people that maybe hadn't committed the crime. I mean, it was almost that bad. You couldn't take anything to the box. Right. So first it started with juvenile justice reform, which was correct. We needed juvenile justice reform. You know, the people that had committed crimes when they were 15, 16, and now 10, 20 years later, and they'd have a strike, that wasn't right. Right. There needed to be something. So it started with juvenile justice reform here, and then there became this blowback against mass incarceration. Gascon came in, and he immediately struck all the enhancements, all the prison priors. So yes, it was like a field day for criminal defense attorneys we could walk in and it was like everybody was a first-time offender. And the blowback to our business was all of a sudden they didn't need us anymore. You know, there was nothing for us to do. And the same thing with bail reform, which it was the perfect storm of bail reform and the pandemic, where they were just letting people out.
Right.
So
I don't want to interrupt, but my understanding, I did a little research, and I read that it was actually an act by the California Supreme Court that struck down cash bail for indigent defendants, regardless of the offense. They said if you are simply indigent and unable to pay, period, paragraph, no bail issue. Is that correct? Or
the case is Humphreys, and yes, but it was a both end, because the COVID policy and Humphreys. And Humphreys made these bail factors, but it became more like the federal system, where it was no bail or low bail. I think, Susan, the statutory bail was just thrown out the window. But then there were these times where they could just detain somebody.
Right.
You know, if the crime was bad enough.
With Humphreys, they did. It had to be reasonable bail based on the person's ability to pay. So you took into consideration if they were indigent or not, and so it's a yes and a no. It didn't take away cash bail because we still have it, and they do go to the statutory bail. They look at that as a guide. However, they don't have to stick with it. They can lower it. And there are certain factors, as Jeff said, that they need to.
Hold on, Mike. Let me ask a question. Did you guys have, because like here in Florida, what we have, especially here in Dade County, we have the same thing, right? If they're indigent, and we have to make this argument sometimes with some prosecutors and some judges, where, you know, a certain amount of bond or bail is tantamount to no bond because they just can't afford it. But what we have here is a thing called pretrial services, right? So if the person's indigent, okay, you can't afford it, but you got to go on an ankle monitor because we got to have a way to monitor you. Do you have that over there as well?
That is an option. We have pretrial services where you can be evaluated as to whether you're a flight risk, different factors.
Right. The way ours works is very similar to the federal, where the court does their inquiry, and we see this a lot in lower level cases. Like, for example, in misdemeanor domestic violence court, this is a maddening topic for our clients. If they know us beforehand, if they get a hold of us beforehand, if they family member or somebody reaches out to us before they go to that initial appearance, we're able to show up at the bond hearing and say, do not put this person on pretrial services. We will post bond. Because with pretrial services, whether there's a monitor or not, it's not everybody on pretrial services has an ankle monitor.
True, not everybody.
But whether you have an ankle monitor or not, there are reporting requirements where you either have to physically appear or call in multiple times a week. You're subject to random urinalysis. If you get revoked, the alternate bond oftentimes is no bond. So, we try and fend our way around that thing to avoid it where we have the ability. But once it's put in place, then you have a problem, because you have people who now no longer want to be on that. They recognize after the fact, holy shit, I could have just posted $1,500, paid $150 to a bondsman, and I wouldn't have to be calling these people twice a week. I wouldn't be called in for urinalysis.
Yeah, Jeff can talk to that about the difference with federal and state, but our state is not designed to be like that. Federal is, but Jeff.
Right. No, what I was just describing is state court.
Our state. Right. That's our state system.
Yeah, that's not ours.
Right.
What's happened is.
What about Jeff? Let me ask you this: what about issues with here in Florida? If you're out on bond for any offense, and you pick up a new offense while you're out on bond, any new offense, the court, sua sponte, or on motion of the prosecution, but again, it can do it on its own, can revoke and rescind your original bond and hold you without bond on that first case, just because you picked up a new case. There's no other requirement. And then we have another layer where if you are out on a certain enumerated violent offenses, which is a whole ton of offenses, not just one or two, and you pick up another enumerated violent offense while you're on bond for one or on probation for one, then you become what's called a VFOSC, or a violent felony offender of special concern, and the court is not permitted to give you a bond. they must hold you without bond. You guys don't have anything that even remotely resembles that.
Here, you want to get even scared? You want to get scared more? You are out on bond on a case. You pick up a new case. You get arrested. Get taken to court. Get taken to jail. And 10 days later, the state attorney decides they're not even filing charges. They drop all the charges. Your judge can still hold you no bond because the standard is that by reading the A form, if it shocks the court's conscience, what they read in the arrest affidavit, they can hold you no bond for the original case that you were out on bond or probation for. That's a little bit harsh, even I think. And I was a former prosecutor. I think you could say I'm a little right of center, but not too far. I think that's a little harsh too. But you guys certainly don't have that in California, right?
It's the Wild West out here. We can have people that are out on suspended prison time, picking up new cases, and their OR, own recognizance release.
It's unbelievable. I mean,
yeah,
we
see,
hear
that's
this.
The other extreme.
We hear this, and we say to ourselves, it's just unbelievable. Because I mean, set aside the criminal defense lawyers in us, right? Just be a citizen for a minute, and then think about how you feel about that, right? You have somebody who's committing robberies or burglaries, and they're just rotating in and out of the system with open case after open case after open case. That's scary, because what do people have to lose at a certain point when you're facing so much, time, and you know that you reach the end of the line here? What do you have to lose?
Well, that issue is precisely one of the problems I feel, and there are many who feel similarly with Gascon having not adding the enhancements. Now they're adding them. Now he's going back and forth in that. If
but
you
is
get
that
approval,
is that because of the political pressure that he's facing with the recalls?
I think so. I think it happened before the recall and during the recall. And it's that he also got a lot of backlash from victims and victim advocacy groups, because these people that, the maximum on a case would be, life. And then he feels that only up to 14 years, I believe, is enough time to be incarcerated. And what about the victims of people who are convicted of, murder and manslaughter and all these types of things? They don't want these people to go out, particularly during COVID, when we had the no bail for lots of crimes, but serious and violent felonies they did. People would be in and out. I have my dear friend files for the district attorney's office and has for many years downtown. And she had one guy who 1 week he came in with a commercial burglary. He was out OR. The next week, back again, another commercial burglary. This happened 4 times in 4 weeks. So she just kept on adding new charges, and he still got out because there's no feeling of, oh, I better stop doing this, because why not?
Right.
When you're going to get out again.
When you use the term commercial burglary, the image that pops into my mind, that we do not see here ever in this state, is the images that we see on the news of people entering like Saks or Neiman Marcus or Walmart or whatever, and just, tearing the place to shreds. Is that what you're referring to?
Yes and no. Commercial burglary can run in, can go from the smash and grab type thing as long as there's no violence involved. There's also other crimes potentially, but going in, taking something and leaving. And you have to show intent, though, the specific intent to enter the store with the purpose of committing a theft or some sort of felony offense.
So like when somebody smashes a window at 2:00 in the morning and starts taking stuff.
Commercial burglary.
Yeah. Okay. So, but you touched on something I want to hit on, because this was in the news just a week or two ago. The victims' rights issue. I read something, or remember seeing something just about a week or two ago in LA County, where Mr. Gascon apparently dismantled or undid the victim notification for parole or probation, whatever it is, parole release hearings or whatever it is, and basically said his idiotic quote, if it is accurate, was something along the lines of, well, these people also have a right to not be bothered by our office, when they were arguing that they have a right to be informed that their assailant is about to be released from prison his response allegedly was something along those lines. Again, I don't know how true or false this is, but I do want to know what victims' rights rules are where you are, because here we have both constitutional, Florida state constitution, it is ingrained in it, as well as statutory provisions that it's a whole chapter dedicated to victims' rights and victims' rights advocacy, which is a niche. A lot of times defense lawyers like Ed and I will actually file a formal notice of appearance in a criminal case on behalf of the victim, basically telling the prosecutor, we are on you like white on rice to make, or here in Miami, yellow on rice, to make sure that you guys do your job.
Paella on rice, baby. Paella on rice.
So how's it work over there?
Yeah, do you guys have something similar there? And what happened with that quote by Gascon?
Yeah, I know a little bit about it. So first of all, it's half the story, because there is a notification process that people can opt in or opt out of if they want to continually be notified. That's already in place. The DA's office had a policy. They had a parole unit where they were doing follow-up. I think Gascon actually just disbanded that unit, where we would have DAs that would go in these hard, sad cases, would go up to the prisons years later. And one of my bosses in the DA's office used to do that. He used to go up to Pelican Bay, which they called the SHU, which special housing unit, and would do these hearings. But I guess Gascon is disbanding that. So hard cases make bad law, right? There's these cases that are these awful cases, but then you have the hypothetical where the robbery is a 19-year-old kid with a stick, right? Is same as robbery is somebody that they're not all the same. So what happened is he was going against Gascon said there were disparities in sentencing. So he wanted to even those out by lightening the sentences. The problem is the rank and file in a lot of cases revolted. They're civil servants. And now there's more disparity than ever. Right. It depends. Like Florida, they're here in Los Angeles County, which is huge. It goes from Santa Monica, which is liberal, and West Hollywood, which is as liberal left as you can get, to Pomona and Pasadena, that's as red as you can get. And those court systems, it depends where you commit the crime and what judge you get and what prosecutor you get.
So wait, in LA County, you have different DA offices that function almost independently. Is that what you're saying?
Well, yes.
Wow. No, we don't have that here.
We have
here, Dade County.
Dade County is a pretty big state attorney's office and a pretty big county. I mean, we have a lot of people here. But we have to be in
downtown LA. You don't want to be in Pomona. But Susan, they're trying to fix that, right? Susan, you're centralized filing.
Yes, I think that it's in some ways I agree with Jeff in that I think that Gascon's idea, poorly executed, but the idea was to make it's not fair if you are caught in Beverly Hills doing one crime versus Pomona or Norwalk, where you're going to be, sitting in jail forever on the same crime based upon who's looking at the file.
Right.
So what they started doing was centralized filing, which was from downtown LA. Instead of each area court, there's over 20 branches, they don't work independent. They work independently somewhat, but they answer to the district attorney.
Right.
However, how can you, with a group of somewhere between 800 to 1,000 deputy district attorneys, how is one district attorney going to be able to have it all the same?
Yeah, we have one felony and misdemeanor courthouse that's the main one. And then we have
branch courts. 5
branch courts, but in the branch courts, it's only traffic and non-jail crimes.
Oh, no.
But it's still, and by the way, these state attorneys are still from the main office.
Right.
They have to commute and they take shift turns in those.
And
branch courts.
the only carve out there is a separate office in the juvenile courthouse
Right.
where they are, and there's also a separate office in the family courthouse where misdemeanor domestic violence cases are heard. So they do actually have 2 satellite offices of the state attorney's office, but at our branch courts, they're just regular state attorneys from the main courthouse that are, pick the unlucky straw or lucky straw if they happen to live in the neighborhood.
It all depends. Sometimes you go to branch court. When you finish court, you can go home. So
Right, but what I'm saying is, like, they're talking about how spread out LA County is. We're pretty spread out here. If you happen to live in Southwest Miami in the Redlands and you have to go to cover North Dade Justice Center at 9 o'clock in the morning, you ain't going to be too happy about it.
It's about an hour and a half to 2 hour commute.
Exactly.
But your same people are filing and prosecuting from your main hub.
All from one hub, exactly.
Right.
From one hub.
Right. So we have 20 hubs.
Right.
And then you have downtown LA, which is a bigger, that's, the criminal courts building downtown where administration is, the district attorney is.
Yeah, that's going to lead to that. It's going to lead to.
So you're not you're not going to have the consistency. So you want to do what's called centralized filing that has all the filing people answering to the head filing people, so it's all the same.
Right.
But that's not working really either, because it's just too big of an office.
Yeah.
To be able to you can't.
Yeah, 800 to 1,000. We have a large office here in Dade County, and I think they're up to 200 to 300 state attorneys. You guys are 800 to 1,000.
I mean, when it's at its height, when they had the most number of attorneys when they're fully staffed, it's at about 1,200. They're down right now. Last I heard, they're very understaffed, and they're at about right now around 800. That's low, very low.
So one thing we're seeing here is we have a lot of contiguous counties, so that are completely different. So Orange County's an hour drive away. Ventura County's an hour drive away, Riverside and San Bernardino. So we can do contiguous counties, and they're very, very different. What we're seeing in those offices is a lot of they don't have the same policies in LA, but prosecutors are leaving the office. We're just seeing a huge turnover, and we have brand new baby.
Why do you think that's happening? What do you have any thought on the turnover?
I don't know. That I think during the pandemic, the criminal justice system out here just started to fall apart.
Well, I think
people didn't handle it well. It just started to fall apart. Too big. Let me pose
the idea that there may be some correlation with the defund the police movement and what happened after the Summer of Love during the George Floyd protests, because again, 3,000 miles away, we're looking at this, just off of news reports, which vary from place to place. But it seems to me that there is definitely was some profound effect on law enforcement in general, in terms of law enforcement officers quitting, retiring, dropping, transferring, going to another state. I don't know how much in California, but certainly in places like, Wisconsin and Washington and Oregon, where they were having major movements over there. And I want to talk a little bit about that, because here in Florida, again, it's the concept of, I mentioned this in my promo today. I talked about how, was in 1800s, it was the gold rush, right? Everybody was fleeing to California because they wanted to make their fortune. But in order for this, when this was happening without, any technology, it was truly the Wild West, and people truly had to protect themselves, right? Because if you were panning for gold, there was somebody trying to steal your gold or pan in your lake or your stream. So, you had this lawless time during the gold rush, and now you've got the Golden State that's back to at least from our vision, a lawless type state. And I'm drawing this analogy because here in Florida, as a consequence of the Summer of Love, you didn't see people tearing down statues and blowing up buildings and courthouses and setting police cars on fire here in the Sunshine State. That just did not happen here. In fact, our governor doubled down and our legislature doubled down, and they passed what was affectionately known as the anti-riot law here in Florida. Now, I recognize that federal courts have put a stay on that law, and it's in the appellate process.
Yeah.
But the
And
point
let's
is,
be honest, it needed to be. There
well,
were parts of it that were a little too vague.
that's exactly what the U.S. District Court said. It said that innocent people could be roped into criminality.
It had one glaring problem. One glaring problem was that it said that anybody who actively participates in a protest that becomes violent, in a sense, is guilty. And so the question is, what the hell does that mean? I mean, you may go to be peaceful, and 10 morons standing next to you start throwing Molotov cocktails. I may not even have a chance to get away from it, and then I get arrested. So,
well, the idea, I got it, but the idea that I'm trying to convey is that basically what our legislature and our executive branch did was they sat down and said, the hell with that. We're not going to have people blocking off highways. We're not going to have people blowing up courthouses. We're not going to have people tearing down statues. If they want to protest peacefully, that's fine. They have a First Amendment right to do it. But we're drawing the line at the word peaceful. The minute that it goes elsewhere, we're enhancing, and we're going to require all sorts of extra penalization. For example, one of the things the Anti-Riot Act did was it created a mandatory, basically, overnight stay in jail because you were not permitted to post bond until you went in front of a judge. So we have carve-outs for that here in Florida for domestic violence cases, for example. If you're arrested for any case where DV is stamped on the arrest report, you can't post bond until after you go in front of a judge because it's a mandatory requirement pursuant to our legislative act that the judge has absolutely no discretion as a condition of bond. They must put in place a stay-away order preventing the accused from being in contact with the alleged victim. Again, this is not waivable. It's not discussable. It's not agreeable. Everybody can come to court and hold hands and be placed under oath and sing Kumbaya. It doesn't matter. The judge is required to do it. And that's one of the things that the Anti-Riot Act did was it said, and it was a disincentive to people to commit, to participate in violent acts. Because it said, if you get arrested under this act, you cannot post bond until you go in front of a judge. So it wasn't like you can't post bond. Ultimately, you can, but they wanted you to sit and stew over it for a little while and make it a little less comfortable. Although, again, I would assume that it's probably similar where you are to where we are in terms of booking. If you do get booked into a jail, it could be, even if your bond is posted the minute that you get booked, it could still be 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 18 hours before you get released.
On that note, I want to bring something else up on uniformity. Here, every county, I'm pretty sure, Mike, correct me if I'm wrong, every county does it the way Dade County does it with bond. We have one judge that hears all the bonds every day, same judge, every charge that's criminal where jail's involved, and it keeps the uniformity because she's the one always making that decision. You guys don't have that, I'm seeing by the shaking of your head. Well, that's going to cause a problem too, right? Because you go in front of one judge one day who has a super high bond and another one that gives you no bond.
We do have.
Wait, I think Jeff wanted to say something, Mike.
There is one judge whose job it is to preside over bond court. We have bond hearings twice a day, Monday through Friday, for every category of arrest here in Florida. And then we have once a day on Saturday and Sundays on weekends.
There they rotate.
They have alternating judges, and then of course they have emergency judges, and holiday judges. I'm sorry, Jeff, I didn't mean to cut you off.
The bonding agent, the law enforcement agencies, I believe, have some discretion on certain charges where they can cite out, and there's young judges that are on call rotating. But for DV, they automatically book on felony, even if it's a misdemeanor. So it's just a $50,000 bond that they have to post. It's not an OR case on all DV.
So that's exempted from your no cash bond rules?
There's certain crimes where it's that still is in place. However, I don't think it's a no cash bond. I mean, Humphreys, you have to show certain factors to be able to lower the bond so it's reasonable bond. It's not no bond at all, that people are just getting out. And then there's certain violent and serious felonies where you're going to have bond. Domestic violence, definitely.
There's been tons of cites and release. What's going on now here is a lot of crimes just aren't. It's amazing what they are enforcement. Like they're busting people for marijuana and for fraud stuff, and they're leaving the violent stuff alone. The LAPD response.
Do you have any? I mean, just intellectually, just us for yapping. I mean, I'm not asking for a formal explanation. Can you come up with any explanation for the why of that?
Yeah, I can.
Please.
Oh, I think that it goes back to what you were talking about with defunding police and what has happened over the last couple of years with, I think the police officers, some, I won't say all, some are concerned about their safety, about their livelihood, about what's going to happen with internal affairs when people are making allegations, and so they won't be actively looking to arrest people. They'll wait for a call sometimes.
Well, you know, that even happened here. That happened here at the very beginning, when before here in Dade County and DeSantis really, I'm not trying to make it political. I'm searching for the right words so it doesn't sound politically charged. But the officers felt, anyway, the officers here wondered what would happen when they saw what was going on around in the rest of the country. And then when they felt like, okay, DeSantis and the powers that be in each county, they have my back, then they started enforcing. But prior to them knowing, there was a holding pattern for them where they're like, hey, are you guys going to turn your backs on us too? If that's the case, screw it. I'm not arresting anybody. I remember friends of mine. I was a prosecutor. So you guys, like me, I'm sure you guys have a lot of law enforcement friends that you made friendships with when you were in the office. I remember a lot of them calling me saying, Ed, we're not arresting anybody for marijuana, for example. To hell with that. We don't give a shit anymore. Violent calls, we're taking our time getting out there. If we hear there's a gun involved, we're taking our time going out there because I might have to kill somebody, and the next thing you know, I'm going to prison. I don't want to get involved. So for a couple of months, there was a little bit of a holding pattern. And then I don't know if you saw the viral video that went viral here in Miami when they tried to do a riot here in Miami, and the officers just started unleashing.
City of Miami.
It went viral. After that, the officers saw, okay,
they've got our back.
Even the Democrat mayors and Congress, politicians had their back, saying, okay, listen, you can get a little bit angry, you can get a little bit uppity, but you got to draw the line when you're getting violent and physical with citizens and law enforcement.
We don't have the protest thing here that much. People don't show up that much. That's not what's happening.
No, it's the weather's too nice.
But
we got better things to do. I got to go parasailing.
But anecdotally, if you live in the city of Los Angeles, which is enormous, the response time for LAPD, people don't even call them.
Really?
You can say there's somebody outside of my house breaking in the middle of and they may or may not show up.
Jeff, that takes me to a really question that I have. Here in Florida, we are a stand your ground state. We are a big self-defense state. I don't know if California has stand your ground. I mean, obviously there's self-defense, because self-defense is, common law for every state to a certain degree. But Florida has created stand your ground, which is self-defense on steroids.
Yeah, no, we have the runaways. We're the runaway state.
So you have traditional self-defense with a duty to retreat. Now, what about in your own home? Do you guys subscribe to the castle doctrine?
That's the difference.
Are you going to lob that one over to Susan?
Yeah, lob that one over to Susan. Give all the hard ones to Susan.
People call me and ask me what happens. I get calls. What happens if I shoot somebody in my own house? And I go, are you planning on shooting somebody? Like I say, it depends on who you shoot.
Right. Yeah, the old joke is if you shoot them in the front yard, make sure to drag them inside.
Well, listen, before we start sounding like Florida's the Old West, let's be fair. Even in your own home, you can't shoot somebody in the back. Okay. If somebody's trying to leave your house, so if I find a burglar in my house, I come out of the bedroom and I confront him, or he hears me and he takes off running, I can't shoot him in the back. And I have to tell some of my clients that all the time. Just because they're in your house, it's not free game. You can't go hunting. It's not hunting
it's
season.
still got to be reasonable. Everything
A
has
lot
to
of
be
people
that
get
you
killed
felt
in. A lot of
fear,
people get killed in houses. You know, a lot of people get killed in houses with whoever. They're having a party. They're having guests. Yeah, they don't. It's not the same here, but it depends on the hypothetical, right? Somebody breaks in the middle of the night and you shoot them. I think you're okay, and it's it turns out to be your daughter's new boyfriend, you're in trouble. It's
here you wouldn't be in trouble.
What if she's 13
if my daughter's
and he's
new boyfriend
27?
broke into my house and I put one in his chest, I'm fine because he shouldn't have broken into my house.
You would not be fine.
Boyfriend
you would not be fine. You would not be fine here. But the practical reality is it depends on where this happens and who you are, right? So the system is breaking down and is still, justice is not fair. Justice is not just.
Well, it never has. Let's be honest.
Right.
And let's be fair for the people that are watching that are non-lawyers or non-criminal lawyers. Guys, really, justice nowhere in the world is 100% what people believe justice. There's factors. There's other things. Sometimes even the law itself, for example, here, the stand your ground. If Michael starts a fight with me, let's say it's a fist fight. Let's go with the basic. You can only use the force with equal force. So if Michael throws a punch at me and I duck it and I nail him and he falls down, I can't continue to pummel him because then I'll get arrested because he's not the aggressor anymore. But yeah, if he takes a swing at me, I can deck him. Absolutely. I don't have to run or go find a cop.
Here's
the only absolute justice is Sheriff Buford T. Justice.
Here's my prediction out here. Things are bad. People are doing the smash and grabs. People are getting away with it, and people are letting them walk out of the stores. We had somebody go through, just bust down the street, bust through a window in the middle of the night of the Chanel store. And,
at least they have good taste.
They eventually catch them if they want to, if they put the resources into it. They can catch anybody. But so things are about to get much worse out here, and then the pendulum's going to swing.
It always does.
And it's going to be law and order.
That is my mantra. You have just said, ask Michael how many times. I studied international relations, and one of the things that I've always said was, if you look back in history, in politics and in life, the pendulum always swings back equally. If it gets really, really, really oppressive, it starts going really, really, really liberal, and then it kind of gets a little less liberal than it was oppressive, and it always somehow finds its way back to the middle until something kicks it all the way right or left again. But it'll come back. It'll come back.
How just briefly, if you don't mind, talk to me a little bit about the concept of sanctuary cities, and how that's working out over there. Is LA a sanctuary city? I mean, by technical definition?
I believe it is. I don't think we talk about it.
It's just one of those unfortunate realities.
Regarding specifically, like in California, I know that, the thing that I think of immediately, and I don't know if you're going in on this path or not, but for example, overturning Roe v. Wade. Okay. California is, yes, Newsom has said.
That wasn't really what I meant by sanctuary city, but we could go there. That's fine.
Are you talking about the undocumented? Go ahead, Susan.
Yeah, I was talking more about government cooperation with law enforcement, but I get what you're saying. Look, I understand. We all know a little bit about that, and I've seen the press releases that California has basically said will be a refuge for anybody who needs this type of assistance, where they live in a place that's either made it unlawful or illegal. Or difficult or impossible
and to be honest with you, Mike, that is the beauty of a democratic republic. right? California can choose to
Absolutely.
do what it wants with abortions.
Right,
And
but
if Arizona tries to prevent anybody, or Nevada tries to prevent anybody from going to California to get an abortion, that's where the federal government has to step in and say, absolutely not. You can't stop somebody from going to California to get an abortion just because even if every single human being in Nevada said abortion should be illegal, no exceptions. You can't stop someone from going to California to get an abortion.
So, anybody undocumented here is still terrified of going to court.
That's where I was going with that.
They're terrified.
It's a two-prong analysis. So prong number one would be the effect on law enforcement in terms of when you have a formal government policy that says you are not permitted to contact immigration, you are not permitted to contact the federal government, you are not permitted to take an ICE detainer, you cannot hold these people if the feds ask you to, they must be released, versus our position, which is a little different. And then the other end of it is what you were hitting, Jeff. How does it affect the client base? Because look, we have people here, Florida's, we're not a border state per se, but we have an awful lot of influx. I mean, from the Caribbean, we have people that have been streaming into the state of Florida for, time immemorial, as long as it's been long before it was a state, right? Ponce de Leon came here. So, we've been experiencing this. I grew up in Miami, and in the 70s and 80s, we went through the Mariel boat lift. We've had disparate treatment. We have the wet foot, dry foot policy for Cubans, but, screw the Haitians. It's horrible. It's really terrible the way that it works. And I don't really want to get into the politics of it, except to say that I disagree with it. But there is an effect on our client base, right? Because if you're a victim and you are a undocumented person in this country, you may not want to call the cops for fear in Florida that you may wind up sitting in Chrome yourself, which is a local ICE detention facility. But in sanctuary cities, they don't have that same fear. I mean, they may have the fear, but it's not rationally based in the law because nobody's going to pick up the phone and call ICE.
They still don't call the police.
They still don't call them, right?
They still don't call the police.
And witnesses
sometimes they do. But some victims, like a lot of the people that have been here, the undocumented have been here for generations. I don't see the flood here in Los Angeles of the new people, but I might not where I live. It's but I don't think people are relying on the police that much. We certainly don't. We certainly tell people that they're not your friends, and a lot of times they aren't.
It's tragic.
Call the police on yourself. You call the police at your own peril. It's a very common thing for people to call the police, not just undocumented, just people to call the police and get hooked up themselves for something.
Really?
Yeah.
I think that happens a lot with domestic violence cases when it's like mutual combat, things like that. And then all of a sudden, which is something that happens on probably most cases, if not all, they say, okay, we have to arrest somebody. Who are we going to arrest? And
that happens here all the time.
And they say that to them. And our clients will say, they said, who are we going to arrest? And then they end up deciding who it's going to be. And so people are concerned about that. I think that with our clients that are undocumented immigrants, they're terrified to go to jail. And they say, and I mean, I remember one client in my mind specifically, who's undocumented, does not speak English, and he's illiterate. And he was a client of ours, and his wife is a citizen, went to court with Jeff, and he didn't think he was, even though we told him, you're going to walk out of the courthouse. You're not going into custody. He didn't believe us. And he walked out of the courthouse, and he didn't go into jail or anything like that. And I said, see, it was okay. But that's a real fear.
See, that's odd because the opposite happens
whatever
here.
The law is, they still feel an intense fear.
With domestic violence here, right, Mike? It happens a lot, I think, at least with my clients, where the clients will call me, and I get calls all the time from the alleged victim.
Yeah.
But I didn't want them to arrest my husband or my wife, or he was so angry, and either they call or even the neighbors call, and they'll say, but I told him no, nothing happened. But there's now I don't know about California.
Domestic violence,
and I know my law enforcement friends are going to be upset with me, at least the brass. But I know that here, it's because of liability issues.
That's purely what it is. There's an unwritten rule with police officers, prosecutors, and even judges that they don't want to be the one who's called out when a domestic abuser winds up ratcheting it up and somebody's either in the hospital or the morgue because they didn't take action. There is going to be an arrest. So what we see a lot of times is we see both parties getting arrested. See, right? A lot of times. So I had one not too long ago, just as a quick tangent, an elderly couple. They happened to be green card holders, so they were not U.S. citizens. They were completely paranoid about their ability to remain in this country. That was an overriding concern. They were elderly. They were in their 70s. And they had a dispute in their condo. A neighbor called the police. The police showed up. They decided that the wife was the aggressor and handcuffed her. The husband went ballistic, telling the cops, "You cannot arrest my wife. Do not arrest my wife. Do not, da, 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 da." They wound up Baker acting him. He wound up going to the mental asylum because he threatened to commit suicide. He said, "If you take her, I'm going to kill myself."
Well, but there was good news.
That was enough for them.
There was good news. He got a 72-hour break from his wife.
Well, everything wound up getting dropped all the way around. But the point is, it's for lack of a better term, those are shit shows in the making.
And
there's just no happy.
It is liability driven. They may not want to admit it, and a lot of people may not like me saying this on Facebook, but I'm telling you, that's what happens. It's same with the DUIs. When an officer in Florida tells you step out of the vehicle and do roadsides, I tell my clients all the time, there's a 99.9% chance you're going in because he's already called in a DUI investigation. If he lets you go and you plow into somebody, it's going to be a record that he already suspected you were DUI, so why did he let you get back in the car? I tell my clients, they tell you to get out of the car, just keep your mouth shut. Keep your mouth shut and don't do anything because you're going in.
Let me throw a few of these at you. I'm not going to name the law firm, but earlier I did a Google search for, quote, quirky California laws. And there is a law firm in California. They're based out of San Diego. And they have a list by city of apparently quirky laws. I don't know whether or not these people are reputable. I don't know whether or not any of this is true, but I figured I'd run some of them by you just to see under Los Angeles whether this is nonsense or what. So let's see. One says, in Los Angeles, it is illegal to cry on the witness stand. Okay? In Los Angeles, you may not hunt moths underneath a street lamp. Releasing more than one mylar or foil balloon into the air is a crime in Los Angeles.
That might be.
Almost for sure.
Almost for sure.
In Los Angeles, it is unlawful to bathe two babies at the same time in one tub. You may only throw a frisbee at the beach in Los Angeles County with lifeguards' permission.
Yeah, that I'm sure is not a law.
In LA, it is illegal for a man to beat his wife with a strap that is wider than 2 inches unless she consents.
True.
Wow.
In Los Angeles, it is against the law to lick a toad. Yeah, that's a good one. How about zoot suits are prohibited?
Good.
Is that true,
Jeff?
As well as it should be.
It is a misdemeanor to shoot at any kind of game from a moving vehicle unless the target is a whale. It is a crime for dogs to mate within 500 yards of a church.
I'd like to see the church group that got that on the books.
Last one. In LA, it is against the law to complain through the mail that a hotel has cockroaches, even if it's true.
Okay.
Now, that said, fair disclosure, we have our share of wacky Florida laws that I don't need to get into.
We do a thing, Florida man in search a date, to look up things. That's a thing we do here. We love you guys in Florida.
We love Florida. Are you kidding me? We got a lot of character. Say what you want, but without Florida, there'd be a lot less humor in this country.
And we love LA too.
Ed, just because you are a character doesn't mean you have character.
That's true.
All right, guys, we need to wrap it up. Any final thoughts, Susan? Jeff, anything you want to toss out there?
We are grateful to all of you, and I think all four of us are here to help.
Absolutely. And we want to thank you.
The name of this show is At Your Service. And
There
what
you
we
go.
try
I
to
love
do is we try to help the folks who listen to understand a little bit about the law and maybe offer up some pro tips here and there that give them pointers, maybe save them a couple of bucks, give them a little bit of insight, save them some aggravation. That's our goal. You know, we are here to help and in a way usurp that law enforcement motto of serving and protecting, albeit for a fee.
In the vein of a pro tip, if I can give a pro tip as a traveler, as a world traveler, when you go to another state, you don't necessarily have to look up all the laws, but treat that state as you would any home that somebody invites you into the home.
Love it.
Don't just assume that you can go and do things like you do in your own home. Just
drink out of the milk container in the refrigerator, put your shoes up on the table.
Treat that state as the host of a home that you've come to and you're appreciative of him. So you ask questions, even though you think they might be stupid, you might want to ask, hey, I know, for example, I know marijuana is legal here, recreational, but am I allowed to do that? Just use your common sense and you probably would stay out of trouble.
I think we hit absolutely everything that I had planned on hitting. So with that, I want to thank both of you, Susan and Jeff, for joining us today. It was a true pleasure to have you. I know it was a lot to ask for you guys to take an hour out of your Monday. We do appreciate it. The audience appreciates it. And I hope that someday you'll come back and we can have another riveting discussion.
Absolutely. Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much. Have a good one.
In the meantime, thank you all for watching. And Ed and I both look forward to seeing you next week when we'll be back at your service with another topic. Take care, y'all. Thank you again.
Bye, guys.